If you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. With any trading strategy, preparation and planning can help you to maximize your profits. Hi, my name is Reese Shapiro, and I'm your binary options trading coach. In this video, we're going to talk about how to plan your trading day. This is the 6th lesson in our series. If you missed any of our earlier lessons, please go back and watch them. Even if you think you already know the material, I bet there'll be something in there that you'll learn that you didn't already know. And if this is your first time watching this video, I suggest that my students watch each video at least twice. The first time through, you might miss something that you'll catch on the second or even the third time that you watch it. So please watch the video, take some time to go over your notes, and then watch it again. And while we're talking about your notes, go grab a pen and paper right now if you don't already have one handy, so that you can jot down some notes or questions that you might have on the material as we go through it. I find this helps me fully learn new concepts quickly and thoroughly. You're getting a lot of information in this video series, and most of it is probably new information. So please, be patient with yourself and with the learning process. Everyone learns at their own pace, and it's better to take your time to learn to trade well, rather than rushing ahead without all the skills and knowledge that you need to succeed. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about planning your trading day. Now, I recognize that we're all busy people. You have to manage your own time, and you have to balance between trading and your personal schedule and obligations. Some days, you might have more free time for trading, whereas other days, you're not even going to have time to log in. And that's okay. You just want to make sure that when you're trading, you know how to structure your time for maximum impact. A trading plan is your roadmap to a structured day. It provides a systematic way of approaching your trading day. Always bear in mind that regardless of how well drafted your trading plan is, it's useless if you're unable to stick to it. So try to stick to your trading plan as much as possible. A trading plan can help you in many ways. It can provide you with more control over your trading day and therefore less stress. It can help you monitor and track your performance systematically and correct any issues or shortcomings that you might have. And it can help you reduce mistakes or even the number of unprofitable trades that you make because you have a plan. Now, a critical part of your trading plan should be related to timing. And when it comes to timing, there are really two types of factors that impact the timing of your trading day. The first type is things that are within your control. And these are things like what time you go to bed and wake up, and your outside activities, obligations to family and your job, and things like that. And these are within your control. The second type are factors that you can't control. And these are things like what global markets are open at what times, the news calendar for financial news specifically, but generally news. These are all things that you can't control. Now, if you prefer to trade at night before bed, your trading plan should focus on trading those markets that are open at that time. Now, if you don't want to trade those markets, you want to trade a different set of markets, another alternative would be to change your schedule, modify those things that you can control so that you can trade at a different time. For example, get up a little earlier in the morning to trade a different set of markets. And if you're like me, you'll make yourself familiar with many different markets as you try to fit in as much trading as possible into a very erratic schedule. The great thing about binary options is that it's a short-term trading strategy. So no matter what time of day you find yourself trading, you should have no problem finding good trades to do at that time. Now, some markets trade 24 hours a day, but you need to be aware of something called liquidity. And liquidity means how much of the asset changes hands over a particular time frame. The more liquidity, the easier it is to get in and out of positions for market participants. Now, some currencies and commodities can be traded at any time during the day, but they tend to be the most liquid during the time when the major equity markets are open. They'll be less liquid when equity markets are closed. Now, more liquidity tends to mean less volatility, which could be favorable or unfavorable depending on your trading strategy. So this is why I encourage you to familiarize yourself with your assets at the time that you plan to trade them. It's very important to get to know your assets and how they trade during the schedule that you think you'll be following most. Once you have a sense for what times of day you'll want to trade, pay attention to price movements during the trading day. In particular, pick a few assets that are open during your most convenient times and observe how those assets trade. Now, to do this, you'll need a news source and a chart source. For news, I read Bloomberg, watch CNBC, and read Yahoo Finance. And I skim the internet for other news sources that might be relevant at the time. For charts, you can get some great ones for free with most retail brokers like E-Trade or TD Ameritrade. If you don't have an account, there are some sources that just provide the free charts. For example, let's look at freestockcharts.com. Here's the freestockcharts.com site. And here we're looking at the SPY, which is the ETF that tracks the S&P 500. We're looking at 5-minute bars for the afternoon today. And you can expand that to include more time. For example, if I wanted to look at the entire day, I could put that in. Now we're looking at 5-minute bars for the entire day today. And you can change it from 5-minute to 1 minute or hourly, whatever time period you want to look at. Now if I click Add Indicator, it allows me to add any sort of indicator that I want to look at. For example, if I wanted to look at a moving average convergence divergence, I would click here and it would put on the bottom that chart. So it's pretty easy to customize and to look at anything that you think is relevant to your trading. And to change to a different asset, you just start typing the name of the other asset. For example, if I want to bring up US dollar versus yen, I just start typing US dollar versus yen, and up comes that exchange rate. Click enter, and now I'm looking at that same chart on dollar yen. Now, you can use free stock charts, you can use your broker, you can use any number of different sites that offers charting software, but I suggest you pick one and stick with it. It's not really critical which one you go with. You just want to be able to get familiar with your charting site so that you can quickly look at a chart, add the necessary indicators, and know where you're going with your trading. You don't want to have to spend time every day reorienting yourself with a different charting software. So now we know how to use our charting software, and you should get familiar with how to use your charting software as you are observing your assets. So you want to observe your assets during the trading day, and if your convenient trading times include market open and close, you want to pay particular attention to market open and close. You also want to look at every day of the week that you plan to trade, because sometimes assets will trade differently different days of the week. So you want to familiarize yourself with that. I've seen markets trade unpredictably during the first few minutes of the session or on a Friday ahead of a holiday weekend as an example. So you really want to familiarize yourself with your assets during these critical times. And the great thing about binary options is that since it's a short-term trading strategy, you should really have no problem finding good trade setups to do at just about any time of the day. Now, each day, before I place any trades, I like to catch up on financial news. I read about overseas markets, futures prices, and I pay attention to levels and directional biases, but also to price volatility, because price volatility is going to give me a sense of what time frames I want to trade and how much I need to diversify my risk. When markets are very volatile, I tend to trade shorter term for a smaller investment amount. And when markets are less volatile, I might trade some of the longer term options for a slightly higher investment amount. I also look for any economic news releases and company earnings that are expected for that day. You want to avoid situations where you're unaware of impending news, Because if you place trades based on fundamentals or technical indicators only to have news move the market against you, you're setting yourself up at a disadvantage. So to avoid this issue, you really need to stay informed. A list of some of the significant data with anticipated release dates and times is available on sites like yahoofinance.com, briefings.com, and several other free sites. So if you go to Yahoo Finance, just click on Investing and then Market Overview, and then scroll down to find the economic calendar on the left. The economic calendar is a list of all of the expected economic news releases for the current week. It lists the date, the time, and all times are Eastern Time, what statistic will be available, covering what time frame. If you're looking at it after the fact, it will tell you the actual, and then it'll provide a forecast, an expectation, and a prior figure, which shows the prior week, month, or quarter figure for that economic indicator. So I always like to check this before I start trading, just to see if there's anything significant, and if there is, what time I should expect that news. And if I'm not sure what something is, it's very easy to Google it to get a sense of what it is, what it means, and how significant I can expect that to move the market. Now, in general, you should expect the market to be focused on the economic news during the first few minutes after the announcement. That news is really going to be what's driving the market during that time. Now, some trading strategies involve placing trades around the market reaction to these news events. And these types of trading strategies I would categorize as somewhat advanced. If you know that there's news scheduled to come out, my advice is to wait and watch at first. Once you're familiar with your asset and how it trades in reaction to news, you can start developing strategies specific to news events. Some of these announcements are weekly, others are monthly, and some are even quarterly or annual. So you can observe each one for several cycles, but you'll have to be very patient for some of those quarterly or annual announcements. A good one to start with is the U.S. data on employment and jobs, which moves the market significantly when it comes out. The news is released every Thursday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The market views this data as an indicator of market conditions, and the number can move the market significantly across multiple asset classes. Developing a binary options trading strategy around the jobs announcement in particular is quite useful because it comes out every Thursday, so you're going to be able to use your strategy every week. And binary options in particular are a great vehicle for this jobs announcement strategy because they're very short term and because you only need to predict the direction of the movement. You don't need to predict the magnitude. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to select an asset. And whether you're trading US equities or currency pairs containing dollars, the basic concept is the same. I typically like to use the S&P futures, but you can use basically anything that relates to the U.S. economy. So currency pairs involving the dollar, S&P futures, the NASDAQ, anything U.S. focused is a good choice for this strategy. I use S&P futures since it's the most liquid, but you could also use individual equities. And I typically like to pick one asset. Since the market moves pretty quickly, you can pretty much trade one thing at a time. I really can't do two things at once. You could have two options on two different assets up and ready to go, but that's pretty advanced multitasking. And I really think that everything's going to kind of move in the same direction. So I usually stick to one asset. And regardless of what asset you choose, what you want to do is you want to wait for confirmation as to the direction of the movement and then place your trade. And in a bull market, positive news is probably going to be fuel for a rally, and negative news might be a buying opportunity if timed right. And the opposite is usually true in a bear market. So watch how your asset trades around the Thursday announcement for a few weeks, and then try placing some small trades to see if you can predict the market accurately. Now, you can also use binary options to trade equity earnings. And again, trading earnings is a pretty advanced strategy. Equity earnings are usually announced when the market is closed, either before or after the session. So you're going to want to trade binary options in the session right after the earnings are announced. And the great thing about binary options is that only direction is important. The magnitude of the movement isn't that important. So rather than trying to capture a huge magnitude of a movement in the aftermarket, you can actually capture just the direction, and you only need to be right by a tiny, tiny bit in order to make your full payout. You don't care about the magnitude of the direction. So that's why I like to use binary options to trade equity earnings. So as an example, Apple announces earnings in the afternoon. And you're going to want to trade news the morning after the announcement. A lot of the magnitude of the move is going to occur overnight, but don't worry. You only need to worry about the direction, not the magnitude. So here's the chart, 5-minute bars of Apple. So you can see that earnings was announced right here when the initial spike occurred. And right after the stock spiked higher, that move kind of petered out and the stock actually came back to where it had closed prior to the earnings announcement. Now, as we roll over into the next day and we look at the pre-market, the stock was down in the pre-market. But there are a lot of folks who can't trade or don't want to trade in the after hours. So those people have to wait until the market opens at 9:30. And here with the spike in volume, you can see the 9:30 open. And right at 9:30, you can see two things. First of all, the large wicks on that first candle. The stock went all the way down there and all the way up here. See how big that upper wick was. That upper wick went up above where it had traded in the after hours. And you can see that a lot of people were interested in buying. This was a huge green volume, a huge green candle. That looks like confirmation that this was a good earnings announcement and people are interested in buying Apple. So right after I saw that first candle, I would view that as an opportunity to buy binary calls, placing an investment thesis that that stock is going higher. And for situations like this, where the market's moving so fast, I like to sometimes use turbo options because turbo options allow you to get in and get out quickly. You can be out in 2 to 5 minutes on a stock like this, rather than having to wait 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to get your final result. Because 30 minutes, and we're already reaching the top of that spike. So if you had waited 30 minutes before you entered a trade, now you might have actually had an unsuccessful binary call option trade. So I like being able to trade quickly, get in and get out. Now again, trading around equity earnings is not for the faint at heart. What I would suggest is that you get familiar with how stocks trade right after earnings before you try these strategies. These strategies offer a lot of potential for profit, but you really have to know what you're doing. So now we have a roadmap to creating a trading plan. We've gone over some news-driven strategies that you can use that are particular to certain times of the day. And I suggest you spend some time observing charts of your assets at your desired trading times to try to determine the best way to trade them. Once you're comfortable with the nuances of a few different assets, you'll be at an advantage in your trading. If you have any questions, you can send them to us at any time. We'll be glad to help you fine-tune your trading abilities. Now, before we end this video, I'm going to go over a question that I get from a lot of my students so that you can all benefit from the answer. Now, when we talk about planning a trading day, many students ask me how many trades I recommend to do in a day. And that's a very individualized question. It depends a lot on what you're trading, when, and quite honestly, how much free time you have. It's possible to get 5 to 10 trades done in an hour and walk away with a couple $100s for the day, and I do that a lot. It's also possible to spend an hour or more watching an asset before you even place one trade. So generally, I find that most students are able to find good trading opportunities in every 5 to 20 minutes of trading. That's on average, so you might have a rapid fire day where you're trading every 2 minutes, or you might have a slow day where your assets are not shaping up well for 30 minutes or so. Don't worry so much about timing or number of trades. Focus more on finding good, high probability trade setups. You don't want to feel pressure to trade when conditions are not optimal just because you feel like the clock is ticking, because that's how you make mistakes. So that's it for this lesson. If this is your first time through, I suggest you watch it at least one more time to make sure you have a handle on everything we talked about today. We learned a lot today. And if you've missed any of our earlier videos, please go back and watch them at least once. In our next video, we're going to learn some advanced charting techniques and technical indicators. This next lesson is going to help you tremendously in your trading. For now, I'm Reese Shapiro, your binary options trading coach, and I'll see you next time.